Oh, we're on the wrong format. How do we do that?
Oh, it's because you just shared your screen.
I was just adding the screen.
Oh
Anyway,
my gosh. All right. It's a
100%.
clusterfuck.
That's the first time we've ever said the name. Oh, man. My name is Steve Daguerre.
And I'm Mike Foster.
Welcome to... That was funny.
Extra boom?
The thoughts expressed on this show belong to the presenters only and not any employer or sponsor.
I got to connect those, don't I?
I don't know. I kind of like.
You liked saying extra boom.
I just want to say extra boom. No, it was good. You can connect those though. Nice. But yeah, hey, and welcome to anybody who's watching live, who's going to catch it on the weekend. I see you, Michael. Yeah, this is Cluster Fire Truck, where we're going to talk about everything cloud native, security, DevSecOps, random acquisitions, things that are happening, CVEs. What have I missed, Steve?
Well, we do expand out. So we look for things that affect the sort of cloud native ecosystem in terms of even acquisitions or changes in business stature. We highlight everything. And then at the very end of the show, we typically end with tool time, where we take a particular specific interest in some technology that has crossed our path throughout the week.
Yeah, we actually have a pretty cool tool coming from our hackathon, our internal hackathon that I wanted to share with you guys at the end. So stay tuned for that. If you like what you're seeing, what do we do? So I have, oh, by the way, I actually got to this. So we have look at this right here. Boom. That'll put that in your calendar. If you want to follow us and add, the Cluster Fire Truck to your calendar. We also have all the about links in the bottom. So we're going to post the links. I have like a little read-only Excel sheet. So I'll post those links at the end of the show when we're done. What else am I missing? We got Slack, workspaces, follow on Twitch. If you follow and you have a Twitch account, you can leave stuff in the suggestion box too, by the way. I see that.
Which is new.
Yeah.
Yeah. Check out the about. I left one there with my alter ego, which was more beer.
More beer. Yeah, it's only one. I'm still on coffee.
It is 5 hours ahead for me. So in this show, we realized we were never giving summaries of what we're about to talk about. So you didn't know what was coming. And if you really wanted to wait for tool time, it's kind of cool to give you a bit of a heads up on what we're looking at, because these are things that have crossed the two of us throughout the week. I think this one's actually this is Michael heavy, this one, because last week was like 90% things I added. And this one, you've gone whole hog here. We've got things. Well, I've added things like ATT&CK Liveness Pros, Tech Radar Secrets. You have added a hilarious one.
Yeah, pranking your teammates when they don't close their laptops. What we got? Mac malware, right? Yeah. We have some acquisitions and some losses.
Yeah,
that are out there, and then again we have the CanIUse demo at the end. So pretty packed.
Yeah,
hopefully I don't ramble too much.
Pretty cool. We have alternative ideas around what we could use with that CanIUse demo. So maybe are we going to open source that kind of stuff? Like if we do, then
it's publicly available. We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. All right. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah. General news first. You had put this one in, so I'll let you take the lead.
Is this the Terraform announcing the general availability of HashiCorp's cloud operator for Kubernetes? And I'm going to say I'm not going to inappropriately share my screen. I'm going to got my camera right in front of where I need to actually see what I'm doing. Will mine share or your share? Add to stream. Bam. There we go. Now I added this as a trap for you, frankly, because you are a Terraform guy. What's your impression of this? Because you backed me up on this one into a corner once. So I'm going to do this to you now.
So
you were an ops guy by trade for a long time.
I don't really understand. I really need to get more into the functionality because I'm missing something here. Because in my mind, it doesn't really make sense that you are organizing anything like this in a container. And even if I was using Terraform, I would not be actually deploying it in an automated way. That's just my personal opinion. When Terraform is really good at provisioning, right? It's not necessarily great at configuration management or monitoring. It creates a state, you manage the state, there are a bunch of different tools and ways that they've created this workflow so that, you can save the state, push into the cloud, lock the state so that people can't make changes and things of that sort. I guess the reason for doing something like this would probably be either trying to get more into like the CI/CD area. I don't know. It's weird to me. I need to play around with it. I'm gonna put this under the STS, the shit to follow, and I will. I'll have a better opinion, I think, next week.
I didn't know if it was a product of just people keep asking for stuff like this without necessarily knowing why they're asking for it, or whether there was a real, what was the problem being solved? And I was kind of hoping you were going to enlighten me.
Yeah, it's not immediate. It's not immediately like I can't read this. It sounds like they want to expand their products. Yeah, pretty much. Maybe they're just getting bored, and they're like, "What can we do in Kubernetes now?" It's like everybody's got an operator, right? There was actually a really good talk. I'm gonna try to find it the next time Steve's looking at something. But at KubeCon, there was a talk about when and how to use operators.
Yeah, that was
when they
good.
do you remember who it was?
No, I don't, but I watched it. But yeah,
I'll find that and I'll put it in the links after the show. But I think it was Joe Thompson. Anyways, yeah, he did a great talk about when and how to use operators, and like not everything needs to be an operator. Some things are small fixes. Some things are just, if you're provisioning infrastructure once every couple months, why do we need to automate it, right? Like, yeah, it's great, but then you also need to monitor the automation, right? So you might just be creating problems for yourself.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, some people are operator crazy. Maybe even our current employer.
Yeah, they have a use case. Like it's just making sure that you're not let's say going past that use case. Anyways.
Yeah, fair enough. Awesome. All right, that is cool. I think I put in the second one as well. Let me check that out because that was pretty fun. I don't want to show everyone our Trello board because then people would see the disaster that it actually is. And this one is because I realized I put it on the screen last time. I'm like, oh, don't look at that. Then you'd. This was just a good article, and it's a little dated. It didn't cross my path like dead on time, but it's this month. We're gonna be forgiving on that. It was the Kubernetes liveness probes examples and common pitfalls. You can get the examples like from the documentation. Like that didn't wow me. I just wanted to see where they went. If you know what liveness probes are, which great. If you don't, this will help. It's additional personal context. But I wanted to see his pitfalls. I don't know if did you check it out and did you see any insights that you wouldn't normally find?
Yeah, and I mean it's pretty spot on in terms of the cascading failures and the crash loop.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that I find is when people start to use readiness probes, liveness probes, and they actually have startup probes now too, which basically are readiness probes just with a more better labeling, let's say. It's just the misconfiguration. You start with liveness when really the first thing you should be doing is readiness, especially if you are not using, if it's a mutable container or you have some sort of initialization process or something like that, you need a readiness probe first. Liveness probe is just going to constantly check to make sure the container is up, right? Readiness probe is one check, liveness probe is multiple, and you can configure that accordingly. And it's always just the misconfiguration between the two that I find most corporations and companies trip up on, right? But really that stems from the bad anti-pattern of not creating immutable containers, right? You see it, I've seen this too with like people trying to port over some legacy Microsoft like .NET app or something like that. And, you have this ridiculous startup script that has to call out to verify that the process is running and it takes 60 seconds. Meanwhile, they have something mounted in, right? And it's like, a very unique use case. It's really hard to actually set up a probe for something like that because like what happens if you have latency in the call out, right? So it normally takes 60 seconds, but maybe where you're trying to pull from or check in takes too long, right? Or isn't verified. Well, that means the container won't run and you're just basically caught in this loop. And the other thing too, that's really hard with restarting containers automatically is if you don't have a good logging solution, you have no visibility, right? So on top of that, what you'll get people that are like, the container continues to restart. let me get rid of the configuration. They leave it, it'll run. It's like, well, we don't really know what's going on. So they'll exec in and they'll do all these kind of bad ways of trying to debug it. And then you end up having just this massive issue of how to manage this container, right? A little bit of rambling, but let's just say that it's worth if you're doing any sort of initialization, you do with an init container and a startup probe. Then you move on to add the readiness probe, and then you add the liveness probe. They are really powerful, and they help. If you set them up properly, they really help keep your applications highly available. So
there you go. You heard it here first.
Yeah, just don't screw them up.
just don't screw them up. It's funny, the application you kind of touched on. I think like about a year ago, there was some, and I'm probably name dropping, but Kelsey Hightower called a little bit like what you just said, distributed monolith instead of microservice. Yeah. And employing some of these techniques in that space, it's like you think you're doing the right thing, but you've fundamentally done something wrong right from the start, which is going to break all this other awesome stuff. The other one that we talked, I was telling you the story about in terms of pitfalls from the security perspective, and this comes back to immutable containers, is that I ran into a moment with let's say a major financial organization where they were mounting at runtime what they were going to use for the liveness probe. So they were basically mounting executables because they only really wanted to do it once. It was like a shortcut. And not just the security thing that I was representing, but many security things that were watching this kicked off over this. And that's bad. I remember at the time, to give credit where credit's due, in order to try and solve the problem or crowdsource the opinion to try and sway their behavior, I asked Liz Rice and said, Liz, can you have an official opinion on this? And she just put it on Twitter because she crowdsourced with her bazillion followers. And so in order to create a poll that heavily swayed it to being a bad idea, which was great because then I could show, look, Liz Rice says it's bad. Liz Rice didn't say it was bad. The world said it was bad via her. So that was handy. So another not listed in the common pitfalls, because it's not a common pitfall, but it is a pretty bad practice.
Yeah. And it's the way of IT, right? You come in, you have some sort of legacy way of doing things, or you don't have enough time or you're short staffed. And so, it's easy just to create a persistent volume and mount it in everywhere. And you just have this script that just initializes, and it's great. It works. If it works that easily, it also means it's that easy to exploit too. So
it's terribly bad practice, and it's a huge attack vector. It's just, there are many ways to say it's wrong.
Yeah, I actually saw there's a tweet that went out talking about why software developers like small immutable containers, right? Because obviously it comes with their own issues of the fact that, it's harder to manage databases and versioning and upgrades and things like that. I remember, running an Elastic cluster in Kubernetes in the old days, like a couple of years ago, was an absolute nightmare. It's a lot better now with operators, but the whole reason for that immutability is because they're very hard to exploit. If you take all of those package management systems out, the ability to exec in, and you just have a container that runs a specific process, its life cycle is all of, on average, 1 minute to 6 minutes for its duty. Really hard to exploit those things, right? When you have big Docker images that sit for a long time, that have things mounted in that are old versions on a older system, you're just inviting trouble. So
there you go. And if you're looking to hear more about that, come see me next week at the Cloud Native London, where I'm going to be talking about exactly those things.
Yeah. Hopefully a lot quicker.
Yeah,
as I ramble. All right, let's move on to the next order of business. You put this one up, so I ramble a little bit. It's your turn to go.
I don't kind of mind you rambling at you, because this is just going to kick off another one of your rambles. I know that. So the CNCF has a technology radar that was, I think it was Cheryl Hung who kicked this off, because she runs the CanIUse, the Cloud Native User Group, and there's been several. There was, I think, one of the first one was continuous deployment systems, and then they did monitoring, etc. And there's some shocking things in there. And then the latest one is secrets management, which of course is a security thing. it only made sense that we throw it up there. And so you get the idea where it's actually like a mechanism that I think is ThoughtWorks kind of pioneered, which what a surprise, right? And a matrix that gets applied, the user group votes, and then you get to see whether what tools are used, heavily adopted, what are they playing with, and what are just kind of on the outskirts of their radar. So I don't think there's a lot of like, this is one where there's nothing shocking. Like I thought was quite funny that I think if you go way back to continuous deployment, Jenkins was on the outskirts, and you're like, and we were all like, yes, like is it leaving? But yet it's still heavily ingrained in everyone's world. It was just funny to see it wasn't in the central zone for that, right? But all this kind of makes sense. I mean, Vault, Secrets Manager, Cert Manager, like these are all okay. I don't think there's any real shocks there. It's just interesting to, unless you disagree, it seems like this is the most predictable result from any of the tech radars so far.
Yeah, no, I think this kind of checks out. I don't know too much about GCP secrets management. I don't know where it is in its life cycle. I'm assuming, because I know that they have their artifact repository that they're pushing now, so it's kind of like an all-in-one for artifacts, that they're probably trying to go for something like that. It's not there yet, but yeah, I mean, Vault, even when I first got into Kubernetes, Vault was the kind of standard, especially when secrets were only encoded and not even encrypted, right? That was, I remember going into meetings and demonstrations, and people were like, these secrets, like if anybody has access on disk, like they could see them, right? It's like, yep, if they have root access, they'll be able to see them. It's like, what? How is this even allowed? So it's it was one of the big things and negative things about Kubernetes. It's like you have to go in, but then you also have to figure out all the pieces. So it's nice when they start to kind of put these things together, and it's like, here are your options. These are stable, right? Just get them mature.
Yeah. And then the other outskirts ones, have you ever used SOPs, like secrets ops, which is everything's got to have ops these days, right? So if there's a way of doing it, it's been done.
Yeah, didn't we mention that a couple of episodes ago? Ops. What was the other one? Flow. I don't know.
It's a thing. Yeah, they should have capitalized the O.
Yeah, exactly. DevSecOps. Oh my gosh.
There's cloud ops. I've heard so many things with ops on it. I can't remember. Ops. Yeah, I've not used it. Actually, what was kind of cool about the radar is when you see things on the outskirts and you've not heard of them, or they've just been kind of in the background. You can take a look at it because it's like encryption for secrets management. I don't know, but it's worth a look. The technology radar is just good to find out what are people using at the moment, what's hot in the ecosystem, because it's a heck of a lot easier than looking at the CNCF like ridiculous logo map and just getting lost in 1,000 different projects.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, that's a hell of a map, but it is well done. I'll give them that.
Yeah, totally. Okay, well, I'm going to kill that. That was good. No controversy, so not as good as you might like.
Sam's thrown all the words in the chat, so I said he's hired in marketing. Yeah, so right. Actually, I'll take this one.
All right, go for it.
I threw this one in. My last company that we worked at, if you left your laptop open, you were buying bagels for the whole team. So we were Montreal based, and there were some great bagels around the corner. So I thought this was pretty interesting. Colleague didn't care about security, so they pranked him. And what did they do? They made it so that if he was on the command line, every CD would be it would just sleep for 2 seconds. Now, not only do they do that, but they also added their SSH key into his authorized keys so they could go into his computer without him knowing. And they kind of moved around some files, set some new aliases. And so when they told him that they had added a malicious file and he ran it, it looked like he was removing basically everything under the user directory. Now, it didn't happen. They were just kind of messing with them, but let's just say it's a fun way to go about things. I don't know if I'm that chaotically evil, lawfully evil to do something like that to somebody, but
yeah, it's lawful. No harm done.
No harm done. But I don't know. It's just more of the, if somebody knows how to do it and they can, like, there are simple ways of getting access and maintaining access to systems. So a lot of it just comes down to knowledge. Honestly, there's, you know, you have some sort of Kali Linux Wi-Fi hack and somebody doesn't set a good password and you're into their network, right? It's taking advantage of just honestly a lot of social engineering. So thought it was cool.
Like, I know you're highlighting that statement, like temporary cleaners.
What?
Is that happening? Like, people, there's organization. You just highlighted there are many cases where temporarily employed staff, cleaners or contracts, I guess contractors, have carefully inserted USB dongles. Now, Michael, let me make it clear. Don't sloppily insert those USB dongles, okay? Make sure you're careful, because otherwise the data falls out the sides. In which a keyboard, it's just
they've carefully inserted.
That looks like a security person wrote that, like, who specializes in fear and uncertainty. Like, that seems like a little bit nonsense, but it was funny that you're kind of rubbing it with your highlighter there a little bit.
Yeah. All right.
It's just hilarious. Don't leave your laptop open. Don't walk away. Otherwise, there are lots of businesses that do that. Like, I know I used to do some work. I'm trying to remember if I can say this, but I will. I used to have a Tesco, the huge retail brand here in the UK, massive like supermarket, really high tech. Like they're a supermarket, but like everything else, they're a software company. They used to have intentional pranking. Like, no, it wasn't like one-offs. If you got rewarded if you reported somebody they were using Mattermost, on the Mattermost, with someone who had done something stupid, or there was a post-it with sensitive information, or it was like, it worked.
Wow. It was works, huh? I was gonna say, is your name? I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to it if it was anonymous, of like this person's misusing secure data. But if you're getting rewarded like in the background for snitching on coworkers, I don't know if I'm.
It's not like that. Nobody said, oh, they didn't encrypt the key data. Like, it's not like real software problems. It's dumb ass things you did.
You put the password on a post-it note and left it in your office or something.
Just that kind of level. This was like, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. So it was like at a level where security wasn't so ingrained in people's everyday lives. So walking away with your laptop open was so commonplace, and not just hitting the keystrokes to lock it was the most common. Because then you just take a picture with your phone, and then they just put it on Slack or Mattermost.
Gotcha.
And that was it. You were like, ugh. You got busted. It wasn't extreme. It was just fun.
It was, more fun.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Moving on.
All right. You on the next one?
The next one.
Nice.
Yeah, I beat you to it.
Yeah. I love doing that.
All right. Kroger's latest victim of a third-party software data breach.
Excellent. Do tell.
Yeah, so they released a statement. It says less than 1% of their customers were affected, specifically using their health and money service, though. So it's like, we only affected 1%, but it was kind of the big stuff. Not like where you live, but your credit card information and all that. It says, what's the company? Acelian?
Who's that?
Who knows? They're
okay. Well, you explain who Kroger, because this is an international show and we don't have Kroger over here.
True.
So
Kroger is like a Publix or like a Tesco in the US.
Yeah.
Big grocery and pharmacy chain. So it was an FTA vulnerability.
Oh, developed by Acelian, California-based company. Okay.
File transfer. I need to look more into this. You chuck this up there. I figured you'd have more.
Oh, this was mine?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
shaking my head.
I am remiss. I think I put it up there because I saw it was a breach. I thought we could talk about it. And then I actually didn't go back to even read it. I'm glad you did.
Yeah, it's all good. I'll move on to the one that I was reading, was the malware on the Macs.
Yeah.
So rare. It is. There was a good Reddit thread of some people saying how you could check it out. It was basically looking at the temp directory and looking at kind of your local applications to see if there was a dot file that had been like a hidden file dot. I think it was like INI file or something like that. But anyway, so reasonably serious, no real payload, but it works on the M1 chip, so it works on the new Macs. It can also delete itself. So what they're worried about is like it hasn't been used. It's been widely kind of distributed, but we're worried about how it's going to be used, and it's on so many computers that they don't really know the effect. So there was a couple stuff online about how you can go and diagnose it and figure out if it's on your Mac. I recommend doing that, but I just think you're going to see more malware and more people trying to target Macs these days as they become more popular.
Yeah. So what was there? Is there in that article? Is there a way to check if you have it now? Is that
not in this article? But
okay.
I'm gonna see if I can find that Reddit thread because I'm pretty sure I saved it. I'll post in the links.
Yeah,
you can find in the about me.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that would be good if people are going, oh man, which is probably like more than half of people who would watch a show like this would probably have a Mac. So
yeah, and they've realized that it calls out. So they've said it's 30,000 Macs that are affected based on the call out that they were looking at. By the way, another thing, did you know that Macs call out every time you use an application?
I did not know that.
Macs send an unencrypted ping back to the Apple server every time you open an app with not your name or anything, but with the IP address, the app, and the time that it's accessed.
That's some very valuable data they have on my use.
Yes, it's. But what's interesting is that if you're not connected to the internet, it's just basically a little piece of code in the background. If you're not connected, it fails fast, right? So as soon as like it opens, if there's a connection issue, it fails fast. But when they first put it in, it wasn't failing fast, and so there was an application hang time that people were noticing, and they had to patch it extremely quickly. I think this was like 6 months ago, but I found that out, and I was like, that is some shady stuff. I wonder what they're doing with it. Anyways.
Cool. Well,
not
that's
really security focused, more just scary.
Thoroughly scary. Now I'm gonna have to look to see how to turn that off.
Yeah. What else do we have? Oh, well, we can get into my favorite section.
You want to hit the button?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Shirley Bassey. That's 50 years old, that clip, where that song came from. That's a live performance.
Ages like fine wine.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
All right. Actually, no real major acquisitions. This one was from a week ago, wasn't it?
Yeah. Do you want me to throw this one up, or
yeah, you're taking over now.
All right. I've been kicked out of the stream. Now I'm in. All right, beautiful. It still applies to security, so it's super important that when these things happen, people who care about security they care if the product they use has been acquired. It is a thing, right? It changes your attitude on it. Here, this is Datadog extending their cloud security capabilities to protect people from attacks by acquiring Screen. I would love, if we were live, I would say, give me a show of hands if you've even heard of Screen. Because it's not one that crosses our cloud native radars particularly often. Did you know them?
No. Did
okay. Not. So back in the day, back in my old haunt when I was at Synopsys, we had an IAST product, which was Interactive Application Security Testing, which means where you instrument the runtime. So if you're talking like JVM, CLR, Node, and then you use that instrumentation in Java, it's like the debug port or whatever. And that gives you visibility into almost like eBPF type, everything that happens inside the application. So it's like you've done that. which is great because it means if you're monitoring a running application, IS is for testing. So if you're running it through functional testing, you can see where you've got the potential for unsanitized input to reach any sensitive materials. That's what IS is for.
Mhm.
Screen does it in. So if you didn't have an IS tool, do I have the screen up? There we go. Their runtime application security platform, I think is what the P stands for, or protection. That's it. That's the acronym. So that's the same tech as IAST, except you obviously haven't done the IAST. Maybe you've done nothing. But now you're monitoring the runtime for anything coming in that fits a series of models around cross-site scripting, SQL injection, or any of the classic OWASP top 10 to look for potential exploits that you didn't foresee or in your code. So we're not talking about CVEs. Well, we could be, but we're talking about the combination, system level combination of your code with open source dependencies and the route that data takes through the environment.
Mhm.
It used to be a little easier when people wrote monoliths because you only had to click into one runtime, right?
Yep.
And then now, although microservice gives you the ability for microsegmentation out of the box and intended route and modeling of data flow, there's still a value in RASP, because I think there's even an article I found where it talks about using RASP in microservices. It does mean you have to have 100% deployment of all your little instrumented runtimes, and then they all have to connect and collate all of their information because they don't have it all in one place. The whole thing's more difficult. I'm guessing Screen do a good job because they just got required, because it's not an easy thing. So there you go. That's what it does. And it's pretty neat. It's not exactly the most hands-off solution. Like if I talk about RASP, like when some people go, woohoo, people come from monolith, they don't bat an eye at the idea of it. But I think in our world, if I said, oh, don't worry about it, it's like pretty hands-off. We're just gonna, have a bit of our own product in every single container you ever deploy for the foreseeable future, and it's going to instrument your runtime. Are you okay with that? Performance is fine. Don't worry about it. Just don't look at it.
Yeah, yeah, that was awesome. There's a lot to unpack there. It's just the issue, and one of the biggest criticisms of microservices, right, is distributed architecture also means that collating all that information is extremely hard and can be challenging for teams, right? The standards need to be set. Like and you actually mentioned it too, right? Like let's say all your microservices are collating information into one spot that are then sent up. Well, really that's actually bad practice. They should be collating something underneath. They should never interact with each other. They should never see each other. And then you should have one service that sits on top that their only job is to pull information from that design spot, right? That's more logging, a little bit different, but there's just so many considerations when you're architecting a microservice application versus a monolith. You can kind of chuck everything in there. You'll collate all your APIs, to have your different functions, but at the same time, there's a lot more shared context. So I actually remember doing talks when Kubernetes and DevOps first became a buzzword that was kind of widely used. And people were like, well, doesn't containers kind of create more silos? Because the data science team can just go do their own thing, right? And then database team's going to go to their own thing, and they have their own requirements, and there's no shared knowledge between teams. And it's like, yeah, that's 100% true. Like microservices don't always solve all of your problems, right?
Wow, we went philosophical there. That's totally true. Like the one thing I want to add about this, why it's still got value again, though, right? When you're talking about like the right way to do that versus this way, is that as an alternative, there are tools out there that are great for monitoring. Like any of the eBPF solutions are awesome for monitoring what's happening in a cloud environment. However, to see the path directly through, like solving the OWASP issues, not necessarily, there's not a great alternative yet for that. And maybe the eBPF enthusiasts can solve that in the future. But if that's what you're doing, you have a choice of like a WAF or you have RASP. Like that's kind of what you've got at the moment. The WAF is further extended out and looking for that behavior at the edge, whereas the RASP is looking. And the good news about a RASP is that it has a very low false positive count. Like if something goes through and looks bad, it's probably bad. Whereas some people compare it to static analysis, where it runs through and says, oh, you might have a cross-site scripting here, and like 50% of the time, it's a waste of time.
It's just noisy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just noise. Whereas RASP and IASP are actually pretty accurate. They're just a little bit heavy-handed.
Yeah, I actually talk a lot about observability, and I think it's a term that's like misused, just because when I was a chemical engineer, it's just, it's the ability to interpret the state of a system, right? Everybody hears observability and they just think, oh, it's monitoring or it's metrics, right? Especially when it comes to Kubernetes. And I think that's just not necessarily the true definition. Creating security tools, they need to be observable, and they also need to be observable for people with different backgrounds, right? Not everybody comes out with a security background, so you have to be able to convey this information and sort of profile and identify these things for different people at different levels. And I think that one of the issues in the security space is that you have people who are so talented and so gifted, know so much in the security space, that they also convey their ideas to their colleagues, right? So it's one more of creating an observable security system is a little tough. So
it's funny. So
pick your tool.
Would I be right in saying, and this is a common vendor misunderstanding of the term when they talk about their products, being able to send a lot of data to Splunk is not observability, but it's kind of sometimes marketed as that. The observability is to be able to turn that data into shit that makes sense in Splunk for the observer, like with knowing the observer in advance.
Yeah, and there's so many different tools that can do this. A lot of the times, some of the issues aren't necessarily with the tool, but with the way teams structure themselves. If you're not using proper labels, if you're not, creating the proper searches or the proper metrics to alert on, you're just you are smart people and you're making the right decision just with poor data, right? So shit data in, bad decisions out. So yeah, the other thing too, I find, and this is not necessarily, this is just more of a people thing, is when you have management, they might have goals and they might say, hey, we need to cut down, or maybe it's uptime or something like that, right? They have specific metrics and they are evaluated based on that metric, but it might not be the cause that they're solving for, if that makes sense. So it's like, they get paid on uptime, but really where the work needs to be done is on some other aspect that you need to be solving for, right? So it's just knowing your system, setting it up for what you're actually providing business value for, right? And then hammering that from the top down. So that's the biggest thing.
There's a huge talk/blog article you've just uncovered in containerizing Kubernetes-based metadata creation to generate valuable observability. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I was in SIG Security this week, and I forget what group they came in from, but they were literally just talking about a slight shift in the way metadata was being presented.
Yeah.
And yeah, you think about it, it's amazing if instead of something being in the header, it's like a little bit more into the actual like object that's being pushed. It's like, well, now you have more metadata and it's actually, streamlined, so to speak, that people can make better decisions on. Little things like that, they make massive impacts in distributed systems. And it's also why CrowdStrike, what was the Humio, $400 million for CrowdStrike that we talked about last week. It's why companies like that are going to become more and more popular. It's because you have things like Splunk that are just shipping terabytes of data. And now people who have created this problem of shipping all this data when it wasn't necessarily needed, maybe, now they're like, okay, well, we got to solve this other problem we created. So I don't know. It's just fun. We got to create problems for ourselves.
That's right. Otherwise we'd have nothing to do.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I put this in there just because I was on LinkedIn this morning and I saw it and I'm like, it's just kind of funny in general. It's big spender, but big spender loss. 4 billion Airbnb loss last quarter.
Just put it up there. That's like, my puny brain is like, what? Can I have what? How? What? Huh? That's a number that, is bonkers to think. And then it begs the question, what is the scale? Like, I had no idea that Airbnb had that kind of scale. I'm not blown away. Like, it doesn't surprise me that they lost money.
Mm-hmm.
It's COVID, right? But that number is insane.
Yeah. Yeah, it's they fill a unique niche in the market, and it's just really interesting to see these tech companies and how disruptive they've become in 3 years, right? Because they don't actually manage physical assets. They let the people manage the physical assets. But if you just give somebody a tool and enable them, you can grow extremely quickly, right? I mean, you see things like Robinhood, right? Before, nobody really could invest with zero commission at the touch of a button. And now you have millions of people being able to do it. And it's going to have an impact on the market. So Airbnb is one of those ones, you know, they're disruptive technologies. And I think that's why people are chucking money at them. Whether they'll be profitable ever in the future, there's a different question. But I don't know, decent valuation. So it's what does it say in that article? I think they're valued at 100 billion right now.
Oh my God.
It's the same thing as Uber, right? It's like you're valued at 100 billion, but you're posting billion-dollar losses. I mean, I can't wrap my head around it, but hey, somebody's making money somewhere.
There is a lot of tech spec going on at the moment. That's cuckoo. All right. Well, someday maybe we'll benefit from this insanity. But anyway, go ahead.
Last order of business. So StackRocks, this was done early February. We had a hackathon, an internal hackathon, and I actually give kudos to the team because they did a hackathon in the middle of an acquisition with all these changes that were coming out with Kublinter and things like that. And so they forked the CanIUse project. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with it, but if you search it on Google, you'll come across it. Just one word, CanIUse, and they called it K8s I use. And so I've seen a couple of these tools, but I thought they did a really good job. They also have dark mode for all you people who like dark mode. But yeah, they just went through and they looked at all the different Kubernetes APIs and metadata and what's the word for it? I'm blanking on the verbiage here, Steve, but the field names. Yeah. And basically they went through and it will give you all of the fields available to you, what versions are supported, and if they're stable or not. So for example, authorization k8s/v1 came out in 1.8 and has been stable and is available in 1.2. So it's pretty interesting. There's so many here that you can go through. So like, yeah, v1 status. Where's app v1? Apps v1. And these are just the delete options. So, dry run, grace period seconds, right? If you want to terminate immediately or wait a little while before termination. A lot of good fields that you can search through. Yeah, you can see this has been deprecated, orphan dependence. So yeah, I thought it was a cool project. Love to hear feedback. I know the team, they said, go ahead and publish it. And they were like, yeah, give us feedback. We'll see if we can post it up and if people want to take the project on. So
I think when we talked about this before, I didn't know if there was a way, and we both have suffered the goofball demo of taking, I use Hipster Shop now for demos, but I used to use Sock Shop. And then it was like 1.5, 1.6 or something when suddenly it broke because Weaveworks weren't keeping that demo app up to date. And so I jumped in here and looked at deployment to see where there it is. Yeah, you can see it.
all of the fields that you can use for deployment.
Yeah, but so much changed at a certain point. I didn't know if it was possible to take the knowledge that is just sitting right here and pump my YAML in and have it churn out a 1.19 compatible version. Or at least warn me, like as if like a Kubernetes kind of way, and say, hey, this is actually not going to work depending, or there's a scope for this particular.
Yeah, show you everything that's been deprecated.
Show me what's deprecated. Yeah. Say
if I'm 1.8 and 1.2 is coming and I have to upgrade. That'd
be really cool. Or just to say this will work, but not part of a supported version of Kubernetes.
Yeah. Yeah. It is one of the challenges, I think, when people adopt Kubernetes. It's like the ecosystem is so vast. You're trying to learn a pretty intense system like Kubernetes. And then on top of that, you have communities and stuff like that that are changing things. Now, I mean, obviously, the changes don't necessarily, it's different if you're using a platform, but if you're using open source and you're running Kubernetes on-prem, you know, I don't envy you. Sometimes you're putting out a lot of fires.
Yep. Nice.
Cool.
That's pretty cool. I was blown away. Yeah, we did that internally, and I went to the. Were you at the thing where the show and tell kind of day where they just showed everything they did, and I don't have. I'm not in engineering, so I didn't get like 2 days off to sit and play. I was tinkering with ideas that when I got there, I'm like, I'm so glad I didn't even attempt anything, because some of the stuff that they were coming up with was going to make me look like an idiot.
Yeah.
It was.
No, it was good. It was well done, and yeah, they did a good job. They came in with ideas, they paired up. They did some fixes on Kubelinter as well.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, obviously, sometimes some things don't work too, so it's lessons learned for some of them. And I don't know, just it's good when you have like an engineering team that gets along and can riff off each other a little bit. So
I think it was good. I think if anybody watches this in the future and you run an engineering team, like throw that at them, because if you want a team building exercise, like taking them out to dinner or give them 2 days off to build anything they want that accelerates or enhances what you already do as a core competency, they'll take that.
Yeah, I actually really like the no code Fridays that some teams do, where it's like all documentation. Like that is your job. Your job on Friday is documentation, like enabling other teams, right? So like if marketing needs something and they want you to comment, like that's your day, right? Yeah, just less stressful deployments. I mean, that's obviously it's not something you could do for every team, or, you know, when things get going, you might not, maybe it turns into a half day, but yeah, no, I like Friday afternoon, go and write documentation.
I like how this is coming. Just for those watching who don't know what Michael does, he writes a lot of interesting blogs. He translates complex technologies into very digestible material, and it is funny that you're saying, well, I think other people should maybe contribute to my problem.
Yeah. Yeah, the engineers are going to work me out of a job.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, just let's get them to do that. Anyway, but you're not biased.
No, I welcome it. Come and help me write things.
Yes, exactly.
Cool.
All right, cool. Are we all done?
That's all we got. Yeah.
All right.
When we went, yeah, we're I think we set a record.
I think we thought this was going to be a short show too, because the list looked shorter, but it was the ramble monster came out and we ran a little long. So if you're still with us, and it looks like the same two people, or at least a different two people, are still with us, so that's cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Sam's hired in marketing. He's got a finger on the pulse for buzzwords, so appreciate you joining.
Yeah, we like that. We like that indeed. All right, do we have any closing statements or anything we need to push or pull or?
So there's the next Dev Kube meetup coming up March 14th, I believe, but we'll be back next Friday. You know, share, follow. The links are in the About Me, in the About section. Yeah, leave a comment. Sam, you can tell us what you want us to dig into. Maybe we'll bring beer next time. They did ask for more for free beer, so
I think we should do some once we've got a huge budget behind this, because you know we're super famous. We'll get sponsors to send beer to all of our viewers.
That would be cool.
That's telling you, if you're watching this, share it with your friends and tell them. Let's expand the audience, and we promise free beer.
Yeah, one of the ways I kind of wanted to expand this, and if people that are watching now or in the future are interested, you know, send a message to can we say it? Cluster facts at gmail.com.
Why don't we just put it up as a banner?
Yeah, we can. But I'll drop the link in as well as an About Me. That's the one thing I haven't added. But yeah, I was like thinking, you know, sort of like a book club for demos. So if somebody wants to go and do a demo on something open source, something CNCF, kind of the general way that they're working with things, if they have a problem, like let's say they're like, hey, we do this at work and I have no clue how to solve this. I think it'd be pretty cool if it's just like, yeah, come on the stream, you share your screen, we'll give you an hour, whatever. You can work through, talk about problems that you're having. I think it'd be pretty cool. So
I just realized I spelled our own show wrong in this ticker. So I'm so proud of myself.
You had one job.
I know. But it's there, it's back, and I have fixed it. But I think, remember the 3 and the 8, right?
Mm-hmm.
because this is a family-friendly show.
You didn't fix it though. It's cluster without the E.
Oh my goodness.
You're fired, Steve.
That is, we should just.
You're fired.
Nice. All right. Then
Okay.
we should end it.
Yes, we'll see you next week.
We're out.
Okay.